Hey, thanks for sending your weekly update email with all those videos. I've been doing like a video review for some of the people last week and this week. So since you sent all these videos, I figured I'd do that so we can go through each video one by one and you can kind of see what I'm seeing. So we'll take a look at this squat first. So the squat itself is looking much better compared to the last video you sent me. The next thing that you can improve on is here with your unrack. So here you're very hunched over in your unrack where you should be straight up and down. So we kind of want to make it like a leg press. So your knees are bent, back is straight, and then the hips just come through and you stand up just like you're doing like a leg press. So what I want you to focus on here is you probably have to bring your feet up just a little bit forward, and then I want you to bring your head up. Like right now you're looking down at the ground. You should look more forward and try and get the chest up. So the chest is pointing forward rather than down at the ground, and the elbows will be pointing down more. That way your torso is straight and a little bit more upright rather than hunched over like this, because this is just going to tire you out, especially when you get to those max weights and you're hunched over. You kind of have to do like a good morning to straighten your back just to unrack it. So just a little thing you can fix. So right here you're hunched over, and then you kind of like straighten yourself out here over here. So now you're straight. So I want you to unrack like this with your back straight, head up, elbows down. But like I said, this squat itself looked a little better as letting the knees go forward more, not sitting back too much. So here, depth looks good, knees are forward. The bar's in a slightly better position than last week, is a little bit more forward. But if we can kind of get this a little further back, it will be better. So just got to focus a little bit more on not sitting back with the hips at the beginning too much. See how over here your shins and your legs are pointing back a little bit more. If we can get them a little bit more straight up and down, because right now look, the bar is already forward. So if we can kind of get your legs a little bit more straight up and down, hips underneath you and a little bit more upright, and we'll get the bar here rather than the bar here. But definitely improvement over the previous week, and the rep moved well. Let's go to the next video. So this is a pin squat. So same thing with this, make sure your back is straight, head's looking up and not hunched over. Make sure you're not walking too far back so that you're inside the safeties. But this height for the pin squats are pretty good. And then that was pretty good rep. It was a little slow off the pins, which is what we want, is that breaking the pins from a dead stop is going to strengthen you in this position here where you're kind of getting stuck with the full squat. So that right there was good. Let's go to the next video, bench press. So I like this position right here for your starting for your bench press. The knee is below the hips. It's going to help keep the butt down. Then you got a nice big arch here all the way through the entire back. Shoulders are squeezed together, arms are down, making your arms nice and short. And then we got the bar stacked over the wrists and stacked over the elbows, over the chest. So it's a great starting position right here. You got a nice long pause, an easy first rep, good second pause, good second rep, and a good pause in the third one, and a good rep right there. So all three of those reps, good pause, good press, looked easy, looked like you could have done another rep or two. So no issues there with bench press. For the pin presses, like we discussed on Instagram, basically that's the setup you can do, and that's what you have to do. So it's basically touching your chest or just above it, but that's fine as long as you can get the reps in, especially with the heavier weight. Then the more range of motion you get with the heavier weight, as long as you get the reps, then it's good. The only other option would be, or two options would be, one would be to not arch as much so that the bar can touch the pins. And then the other option would be was to, instead of taking it out of the racks, you just kind of have it set in the pins from the start and raise this up one more. So you'd start from the pins, you'd push it up a couple inches and then bring it down back to the pins. So you'd actually be starting from the bottom going up rather than right now from the top going down. But if you like this setup and it feels good and you can do the weights, just stick with that setup Everything looked great on that one. For deadlift, let's take a look at this one from behind. So first thing you see is here's your hips kind of come up a little bit right there. So remember, you don't want to sit down too much. If you sit down too much, then you're going to be relaxed here in the hamstrings, and you're going to be relaxed in your back, and then the hips are going to come up a little bit until it kind of catches that tension in the hamstrings. So we want to make sure we still keep the hips slightly higher than the knees, trying to get that good starting position, and make sure we're having some tension on the bar. You don't want to be relaxed on the bar and just pull from a dead stop. So that's why we have this little issue here where the butt comes up a little bit and your back rounds a little bit. So just got to focus on that, making sure we're pulling on the bar a little bit already and having the hips start up a little higher. But the speed of the reps are good. So this is a better position right here where the hips are a little bit higher, but then you sit down a little bit and then it comes back up. So you want to where you naturally come down. So when you bring the bar down, you're naturally at the right spot. So this is already your right spot that you should be in. Hips are higher than the knees, shoulders are higher than the hips. All you have to do is straighten out your back. But then you sit down a little bit too much right there, and then it comes back up. So you don't need to do that little dip down. The other thing I noticed, just to be aware of, is making sure your knees are locked out at the top. So here you can see your knees are locked out, but then as you go to push your hips through and the shoulders back, you kind of pull your shoulders back too far and you unlock your knees a little bit right there. Okay, so you unlock your knees a little bit here just to get the hips back, or the hips through, excuse me, and the shoulders back. And so you unlock the knees, you want to be careful about that. You don't want to get called for that. So you can kind of see the difference here, knees are locked, and then you kind of rock them forward and unlock them a little bit. So you can see that right there. If you just look at the knees, you can kind of see here it unlocks when you were already locked here. So once you're in this position and the knees are locked, you just want to think hips through, shoulders back. And one thing that helps me with sumo is think about flexing my quads. So if you flex your quads like you're a bodybuilder, you're trying to show off your quads, that's going to lock out your knees. If you're relaxing and you're really focusing on leaning back too much and you're relaxing the quads, then the knees are going to come unlocked. So just be careful with that. And you had a similar issue with the block pulls. Everything else for the block pulls look fine. It's just focusing on locking out those knees at the top, just so that we don't get called by the referees. You're going to have the top level national and international referees there, and you don't want them to call you for that. So here you start with your hips in a higher position because it's a block pull. And you can see this is a good position. Hips are higher than the knees, shoulders are higher than the hips, back is straight, arms are locked out, and that's why your hips don't shoot up on this one. You stay with it, and you lock it out. Again, you just got to focus on here, the knees are locked, and then here you kind of bring them forward and they start unlocking. So the difference between there and there, you just want to be careful about that. So you want to keep the legs straight like this, locked out, and then just hips through, shoulders back, flex the quads. So I try to look for a picture of that, and it is conventional, but you can kind of see the picture of if you pull your shoulders way back and hyperextend your back, then what happens is the knees unlock here. But if you just kind of do more of a natural standing position, then the knees are good. So you don't want to do this because we don't want to get called for that. We want to do this. All right, so all around, everything looked good. For squat, we just want to focus on not hunching over when we unrack, because it's going to waste our energy and it's going to lose some of the tightness. We want to keep back straight, elbows down, face and chest pointing forward, and then do our unrack. And then just continue focusing on not sitting back too much. For bench press, everything looks great. Keep doing that. Pin press, as long as that feels good for you, everything is great. Keep doing that. And then for deadlift, just focus on keeping those knees locked out, and you try out the cue, flexing the quads at the top to lock out those knees. All right, I'm going to go take a look at your actual numbers for this week, see if we need to update anything, and then I'll send you this video and possibly an update to your training file. All right, hope that helps.